welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I do everything from book reviews to tarot, and if you're returning, I'm so glad I haven't scared you off. So what are we talking about today? Today we are talking about My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. The plot follows an unnamed woman in the year 2000. After going through a series of heartbreaks and losses, she decides she's going to sleep for a year and emerge a new person, essentially. And she finds this loathsomely unprofessional psychiatrist who agrees to prescribe her all these different sedatives because the psychiatrist, Dr. Tuttle, believes that this character is suffering from insomnia. Our protagonist comes from an extremely privileged background. Both her parents at the time of the writing are passed away, and she's left with a massive inheritance. She has all her bills on auto pay, and she doesn't necessarily have to work because of the wealth of her family. So she essentially is pretty limited to the block around her apartment and her apartment itself. She goes about her days compulsively watching movies on her VCR, getting coffees from the bodega, and that's really what her day consists of. And she feels like she will come out of this a new person with a fresh identity. And so I was watching an interview with the author before I recorded this, and she basically says that she didn't want to give the protagonist a name because it wouldn't fit this goal of giving herself a fresh identity. You know, giving her a name would be giving her too much of a past. And to that end, essentially, there are very few characters in this book, very few characters with names. Our protagonist has a best friend. Her name is Riva, and she kind of functions as the voice of reason at times, and an ex-boyfriend, Trevor, but that's really all we know about her past in terms of named people. She doesn't really have a lot of connections to the outside world. She has a former boss, you know, former colleagues that pass by here and there, but no real meaningful connections. Obviously, this book takes place the year before the tragedy of 9/11, and in that we kind of see the pre-war paradigm of this glitz and glamour being what matters in this world. And I think our protagonist kind of says that for a long time she tried to play that role of, you know, the upper class person who cares about their looks, who does all the waxes and all the manicures and pedicures and all this stuff, and cares for herself on a very superficial level. But she kind of grew disgusted with that, and with, you know, her lack of a family and with her lack of a real base, felt as though she felt kind of listless in this pursuit of all this glitz and glamour. Now, the author has said that she doesn't see this book as satire. She thinks, like, once you get to the end, you will recognize it as not satire. But it is, I have a hard time not seeing the satirical element here. I mean, here you have a woman who decides to sleep for a year. Already a bit of a ridiculous premise, if you ask me, but also the humor in this book is great, I will say that. It kind of gives the vibe of American Psycho. You have this woman who is in desperate need to connect, in desperate need to share, and everyone around her is too wrapped up in their own selves to kind of give her space to share what really ails her. And on the flip side too, her friend Riva is always trying to vent her concerns to our protagonist, and the protagonist seems kind of perturbed by that. She doesn't want to be there for Riva as much as she wants Riva to be there for her. So there's definitely a back and forth of sort of an inability to connect on both ends. And I think you might not recognize it right away, but that's where a lot of the humor comes from, a lot of not seeing what's in front of your own face. I think in the protagonist's inability to connect with other people, the readers kind of get this diary of a person who is so deeply repressed that she's not even really able to recognize her own feelings, sedatives or whatever aside. and there's a lot of deep psychological meaning and work to be done within her own self. And it's heartbreaking to see this person who, at every turn in her life, even when her parents were alive, didn't really share this connection with her, and therefore she is kind of, her own senses are really dampened, you know, even without the sedatives. And the author may disagree, but I think this is a really interesting commentary on like pre-war, late stage capitalism, where the consumer and consumerism was paramount, and all these deeper, more cerebral elements of life were put on secondary. It was all about the appearance of prosperity and the appearance of wealth, and the inner workings were kind of not prioritized as much as they were, you know, post-tragedy. This book was definitely in the must-read category. I was going to put it in a must-read category for the people who are watching this video. But honestly, and this is going to get into spoilers, so this next section is going to be spoiler time. I'll give you time to click away if you're not interested. But the last, I don't know, like, chapter or so kind of, didn't ruin it, but it just upset me. What I mean by that is, so spoiler time, once again, this is your final warning. The book ends, the last page is September 11th, 2001. Actually, forget that for a second. I want to get to the larger idea that when she wakes up from, or when she finally leaves her apartment from this slumber project that she's accomplished, it actually seems to have worked, which I don't really necessarily know if I like. The idea that you can sleep all your problems away. I thought the moral of the story, or the lesson at the end, would be like she was still messed up, because sleeping isn't gonna like fix all your problems. There's a lot of work you have to do, I think, physically with yourself during waking hours in order to heal from the different repressions and trauma that you are going through. Personal belief. And I think the idea that you can sleep it all away and it work is a little bit irresponsible maybe on the author's part. Maybe that's a heavy word, but that's kind of how it feels. And also, I don't really like the book is, the last page, like I said, covers September 11th, 2001. And our protagonist basically says that she recorded the footage of the towers falling. Now, I want to say that her best friend Riva worked in the towers at the time, and she said that she saw like a woman jump from the 78th floor, and she recorded that footage, not because it necessarily looked like Riva, even though she says the person looked like Riva, but that woman was jumping, and she didn't know where she was going to end up, and she was wide awake. So she plays that video every time she needs courage, or every time she's bored, or every time whatnot, because of that image that this woman is jumping and doesn't know where it's going to lead, but she's wide awake. And I'm like, is that supposed to be inspirational? You know, how can that possibly be inspirational? Obviously, that woman is going to die if she's jumping, 70 floors, so it's like, are you saying that the death of this woman is inspirational because she was leaping to her death? Like, I don't understand the logic behind that, and it kind of felt weird and exploitative. I don't know, I just don't like the use of real life tragedies in stories like this, but I could see why people wouldn't necessarily mind it. I mean, obviously that tragedy marked kind of the end of this paradigm of the glitz and glamour, like I was saying. So it makes sense that her new identity would be ushered in with this new era. But I don't know, my feelings are very complicated on it, and I can see both sides, essentially. I understand why 9/11 was put in the book. Do I like that it was the last page, and do I like how our protagonist came away feeling about it? No, I do not. But is that in line with her character? Yeah, so it's very hard. It's very hard for me to reconcile my feelings on that, because it is in line with her character. And I'm not going to fault Moshfegh for writing a character consistently. That's one of the things I gripe about in other books. So yes, I'm glad that you wrote the character consistently, but it was still kind of off-putting. I don't know if it ruins the whole book. Honestly, I finished it yesterday, and I thought it was one of the better books I'd read this year. And after I slept on it, I had different feelings. I'm trying to reconcile which of those feelings is correct. I think it's still an important book to read because I think it's a very interesting premise, and I haven't read a book like this in some time, and I appreciate the humor that's used. I appreciate a lot of the ideas that are explored. So it's like, does the ending ruin the book? It's hard. I'm gonna say, I want you guys to read it because I think overall it's an interesting book, and I think the fact that I felt so perturbed by the ending necessarily, by the fact that her sleep solution worked, by the use of 9/11 in this book, the fact that I was angered by it, I think the fact that it evoked a powerful emotion in me at all is kind of speaking to the book's quality and speaking to the fact that you should read it, because it's better to feel strongly in one direction about a book than feel nothing for it at all. Right now I'm gonna give this book a 7 out of 10. Again, I'm still working out a lot of my feelings on it. I think the humor is, again, something to admire. I think this book tells a lot about socioeconomics in a very interesting way, in a very interesting discussion of privilege. There's definitely a lot you can talk about with this book. So for that reason alone, I'm still gonna say read it, because it stimulates the mind, okay? This book stimulates the mind, and that is enough of an endorsement for me. But let me know what you guys think I should read next. I'm kind of in between books right now. I was thinking about doing the Iliad, but again, I don't know who wants to see my thoughts on classic mythology. I don't know, I'm looking around Book Talk, but let me know your thoughts in the comments, what I should read next, what you think of this book even. And I'll see you guys